Let's have a look at a cheat sheet of all the visualizations what is available in the Power BI desktop as well as Microsoft certified app source, which is like an app store for visualization. And if I have to classify them, best answer what this cheat sheet will give you is which visual to use when. A toughest challenge for a designer, as in which visualization best fits for your organizational need and the data you are trying to plug into the system. When I say this, it always is the designer's choice of the visualization, what he would like to represent it as. However, the key things what he needs to keep in mind is when you have to compare different things or compare the multitude magnitude of the measures, I mean to say, if you are comparing a volume of two things, sales of multiple areas, gender ratio across different regions, sale across different geographic regions, or you are comparing your different product lines and the sales of your product lines, if you're comparing minimum threshold levels which are available, you are comparing the pipeline of different products what you have, and so on and so forth. So when there is an apple to apple comparison in terms of units, then this comparison chart helps you. So when I say in this figure, let me zoom it a bit and let's see. So if I say in this chart, when these are the different visualization which are available for comparison of the magnitude of measures, and whatever in yellow do you see is the default available made available in Power BI desktop application. Whatever ticks what you see in your visualization are the certified app source visuals which would be available in the Microsoft certified app source. With this, when we compare a clustered bar chart, be it a vertical or a horizontal, please keep in mind that we are also revising all the visualizations available to us in the Power BI desktop application. So what happens is when you have two categories of sales, for example, if I consider this row as unit, and this is sale in month of January and the second in sale of month of February. So in terms of January and February, the product A has sold lesser than product B. If I say orange is product A and blue is product B. Similarly, in the next month, that is February, this product A, the unit sold, however, has increased, but it still is lower than the units sold by the product B in the month of January. This is represented horizontally or vertically. Similarly, if you have a dot plot, you can always have a dot of January and February, which are placed one amongst one above the other, February having a higher value. A stack chart would be summing these two charts one over the other and making a stack of different items of product A and top of it the product B. It can be stacked horizontally or vertically. Similarly, stacked bar chart is, again, this is a 100% stack chart. So this also gives you the percentage breakup of ratio of the products which are being sold. If 100 is the volume of sale, if there are 100 products sold, how much percentage is of product A vis-a-vis product B. So if you have your finite space and you want to break that content into the percentage, it's like a pie chart, then probably this is another visualization which you can make use of. So the total units sold would be representing your 100% of the value, and amongst that 100% value, what is the percentage share of product A versus product B is shown over here. A stack chart would be irrespective of the percentage. If you remove the 100%ness of the every bar, then the stack chart would look similar to this. Then there is Makiko chart, power KPI matrix, ultimate variance, ultimate waterfall, which is like an adding things up and down over the period of time. So if you have multiple products and the product A followed by product B, and then there was slack, and then product C, which brought down the sales, and then finally product D. Then it happens. If you are a publisher, or if you are working on a feedback or a summary based or a text based data, then you would ideally would like to know what are the keywords used by the end users to search, to analyze, to update, to provide the feedback. So the keywords based on their occurrence would be displayed in a word cloud. A very good way of representing the word usage and the sentiment usage of different feedbacks, and usually this is used in analyzing different feedbacks. Impact bubble, Vitara charts, data insights by MAQ, dot plot. So if this is one kind of formation, the dot plot can be another kind of formation. A drill down column chart would give you a, if there are categories and subcategories and more subcategories for every product, then the drill down chart can help you identify if there are sale of 100, what was the quantity of A product, B product, C product amongst these 100 values. Enlightening stack shuffle, rotating chart by MAQ, bullet chart by them, linear gauge. So linear gauge is where we are, cylindrical gauge by them. So it's more towards target versus achievement kind of a thing. A thermometer by an MAQ, where you have a target and then you have an achievement kind of a setup. Then you have a horizontal bar chart similar to these clustered bar chart. Enlightening bubble chart, clustered bar chart in a different representation with some grid around it. 100% stack. This is like an alteration of the default ones given by Power BI. And again, these are not certified ones. These are not available on App Stores. You would have to search it separately. Chart accent bar chart, 3AG bar chart, SAG column chart. So these are available, however, they are not certified and okayed by Microsoft. This is matrix, the table. These are default, made available default into your system. Circular gauge, tachometer, how far the sales have reached, how far the units have sold, etc. How far the units are left, what is the target, and how much you've achieved. Circular gauge. So this is what I was representing. Circular gauge can easily be replaced by 100% stack chart in that scenario, because the circle represents 100% and this is what it is. So an ideal way of representing an 100% chart would be a circular gauge. However, is an individual's choice which fits well in the organization and the end user should be used. A radar chart based on the sales and different parameters. Bubble chart shows the volume across 1, 2 and 3 things. So blue has sold more in terms of magnitude compared to a pink, and then less to the brown. Similarly, a clustered map, and so on and so forth. The next is change over time charts or visualization, which are effectively used to represent something changing and something changing over time, and which is continuous nature. For example, if you have a time period of January to December and you have chalked out the count of sale for every month, then it is fair to understand and convert that bar chart into a line chart. If things are moving on the chart, the lines are formed automatically based on the points which are available in the chart. So if these two charts are there, then and again, if you have a continuous data, for example, if you have a data of a day which you want to aggregate for a month or an year, in that case, you can some aggregations which are from arriving from a continuous data at a lower level, then it is fair to make use of these changes over time charts. Which are these? Let's have a look at them. Then there is a card which states the flow of time. Again, there is a ribbon chart which is a continuous nature and it can show you of that content. Then there are candlestick charts, which is a typical stock market charts would ideally have. If you have a script of stock which is running continuously changing every minute or every day, and you want to make use of that content basis the differences it made for every day, a candlestick chart works best. Then there is a power KPI chart wherein you can have two continuous measures running parallelly with each other. And for example, the cost reduces, the volume of sales increase, kind of a stuff. So if you are tracking two simultaneous measures which are continuous nature, then in this case it makes sense to make use of these charts which are changing trend of the measures over a period of time. If you are dealing with, for example, an exchange rate, then a KPI ticker would help you to display the change of the rate compared to a previous day and indicate with a green or a red symbol. That's this chart, KPI ticker chart. Then you have a power KPI matrix wherein you can make use of multiple KPIs and put them in place. Then there is a line dot chart wherein you have these bulbs which are available over the lines, which identifies the dip or the increase at a particular point in time, which is at a periodic pace. Then you have a Gantt chart, which is a typical project management chart which you can make use of tracking different tasks and its length, its duration, etc. Then there is a KPI grid having details of multiple KPIs. Then there is a calendar chart which can show you different content. And then there is different kinds of multiple KPIs, small multiple line charts. So if you are working with multiple KPIs to be tracked, for example, volume, raw material, sales, profit, all of that can be tracked at one go. Advanced card, it's like a one KPI card with few more features. Then forecasting chart when you can make use of R, and then these forecasting models can give you roundabout growth or a fall of those pattern based on earlier history. So R is a visualization language which helps you customize this chart, create a few and make use of them based on your organizational rules. Little bit of an advanced chart, I would say. Then there is dumbbell chart which shows like a exercise dumbbell wherein it's again and needs R as a language, and then it would be able to process your content. A KPI chart, again a simple KPI chart default made available in Power BI application. KPI indicator is similar to this, but the visualization is different, which includes a line as well as a percentage change. A dual KPI is it's like a modified version of a KPI chart which tracks only one, whereas dual KPI tracks more than one, which is precisely two charts. That's why the name. Then there's a pulsar chart which shows growth and the fall over a time period, and the fall is put into the negative and the growth is put into the positive. Every day starts at the center of the line, and that's how it is. Chart accent, trading charts, again the candlestick charts are best, which shows different states in which that stock was over different time of that day. Gantt chart, again everybody knows a modified version of this Gantt chart available. Both of them are available in the app source. Then there is a timeline chart, clustered column chart, line and a clustered, a very interesting format wherein you are tracking more than two things in one chart and of a different kind. Then this is the way it should be. So this can ideally be the sales pattern or a revenue pattern line chart. Against, in the background it shows individual sales, so an aggregated value with some default broken down values can be shown. So a line and a custom column chart, a very handy, useful and very intuitive explanatory chart made use extensively by all the designers. Keep in mind of this. Line and a stack chart, waterfall chart. Stacked area chart is similar to a line chart, but the area below every line is stacked. Also, it is one over the above chart, a small variation of a stack chart. This is a stack area chart which in that covers an area, and Therefore, it needs a constant time factor moving horizontally right. Area chart is similar to the stack chart, just that they overlap each other, whereas the stack area chart do not overlap over each other. KPI chart, you know that KPI column by MAQ in the bottom row, drill down chart, table, heat map. This is like a heat map of various products based on sales, etc., which you can think of applicable to your industry in some way for sure. Then there is a heat streams, then there is a horizon chart, clustered column chart, and chart accent bars, wherein you can have this accentuated bars which gives additional info at the top. All right, we have this ranking chart, spatial chart, and flow charts. These charts help you rank measures in an order. So like you saw in the earlier charts, few of those charts help you rank those items based on some order. So clustered bar chart, you can order it based on the particular product or in terms of the growth or a height. You can rank them specifically. Metric charts also. So basically things which you can sort is what you can make use of over here. So you have option to sort in clustered bar charts, matrix chart, tabular chart, and then you have some unknown T accounts, and then there is table sorter. So something which works on sorting is the chart which you can make use of to identify the ranking. So these group of charts are made use of for identifying the rankings. Sortable charts, if I have to tell you the list, these are ranking charts, and the top four, the clustered bar chart, cluster column chart, matrix, table, and at the bottom right, multi-row cards. These are the main charts which you can make use of to identify the ranks of the products, people, growth, etc. Moving on, the next is a spatial star. Spatial chart are used to display measures over spatial maps. So anything with respect to a geographical region, okay, can be made use of using these spatial charts. So spatial means geography, and for them you have the map chart available to you, and the field map chart and the shape map chart available to you by default. There are new arc.js maps in the latest version of Power BI Desktop. Along with that, you have different kinds of charts. One of them are is globe data bars, and there is a drill down cartogram and drill down choropleth. All three of them are available in the app source. However, keep in mind these all charts are to be used when you are working with the content which speaks about different geography. So easiest way to identify this is look for the geographical terms in your data. So probably a column or a region or a city or a state or a location or a street, etc., can be made use of to put the data on these maps. A very a good representative way of displaying geographic information. Then there is a flow, or if there is a flow or a dynamic relation, for example, a funnel, which is the third column, for example, a sales funnel, where you work on lead to opportunity and then moving on to sale and then closing, servicing. So usually those for different stage based chart are the flow charts. So wherever there are different stages which you feel in your system and which you want to separately represent, for a typical developer or designer flow would make use of different approval stages of your system that can be effectively represented in this. It can also tell an assembly line which is also staged by in some manner and which can be represented using these flow charts. There is a waterfall chart which shows different stages. Then there is an alternate version custom developed by a third party and hosted on an app source. Then there is chord, then there is force directed graph. So things when move from one thing to another.
that can be shown over here. Then there is a bow tie chart when you have certain sets going into another bucket that can be represented. A funnel source with an MAQ, horizontal funnel by MAQ, hierarchy chart by elevation, social network graph showing who knows whom kind of representation. So it's like a link as well as a stage based flow which you want to represent. So as you see, these charts are available for usage, but it comes with a brief question which a designer or a developer have to answer, as in which chart is applicable to my current need. And that comes from the business, as in a business would like to see some specific information, and which by default, if you think on that information, you analyze and realize it falls in one of these buckets, like ranking chart, spatial chart, or a flow chart. It's good to know the categorization of these charts. Also, the know every chart at a very cursory level, so that you can always come back to this slide and identify which chart is applicable in my current scheme of things. Organizational chart, again, it moves from one to another. Then there is a journey chart by MAQ. It's an alternate version of a social network graph. Then there is a slope chart by MAQ again, and the R represents there is a need for the R language understanding also in place. Part two whole. When you something in terms of parts adding up to the total, in that scenario you can use these columns, these visualizational charts. So this is similar to those 100% stack charts or those clustered bar charts which we made use of. So in the scenario where you have something which is part of whole, for example, you are working on the sales of multiple products, or you are working on admissions, total admissions in the school. So something where you have a visibility of the total in the area, and you want to understand the composition or the constituents of that product or that individual value, then in that case, or you want to understand the breakup, if for example in an academic scenario you might have 10 subjects and every subjects will have 100-mark exam, and for every examination you must have scored different marks, which would add up to your annual total of marks. So if you want to see the composition of your decomposition of your total marks, in that scenario the part 2 whole can come in perspective, and for that you can make use of clustered bar charts, clustered column charts, 100% stack bar charts, 100% stack column charts, stack bar charts, stack column chart, line and cluster column chart, a combination of a line and a bar chart. Then a drill down column chart, like I said, if you have multiple things, you can break down in that way. Then there is a KPI column chart by MAQ. Then there is a KPI chart by another company. And there is a rotating chart. Then there is which keeps rotating in the visualization. If there are more values, then a rotating chart helps to identify those many values without having a scroller. So slight difference in the way that visualization works, and you have already new chart by some company. Horizontal bar chart, then there is a clustered bar chart by Equilion, and then there is a Equilion having a lot of charts which are similar in many sense to the default charts provided by the Power BI desktop. Then there is a table sorter chart. Then there's a pie chart. So a typical part two whole would have a pie chart, a donut chart, a sunburst, a ring chart, which are all circular charts. Then there is a tree map, which is like a modified version of a pie chart represented in a squares and the area of that square. And then you have a brick chart, which is like a stacked bar chart. Then there is an enlightener and a waffle chart. Waffle chart is also all the unfilled cells represents the total, and the orange ones are the consumed ones. So the availability versus the consumption kind of a thing, or a target versus achievement of kind of a thing, or a total versus an individual kind of a thing, or a revenue, total revenue versus individual product sales kind of a thing, can be made use of using a part to whole charts. So when you have something in relation wherein whole can be broken down and decomposed into a smaller parts, and you want to track those smaller parts, you have to make use of these charts shown on the screen. Distribution chart. It is used to display the distribution of values. So if you are coming from a perspective that you want to show a distribution of many things, then these charts can help you place your values on a time scale basis or a period scale basis or any other basis, and show it to you what are their volumes like. For example, a clustered column chart or a line chart can be used over here. Then there is a histogram chart, then there is a box and a whisker chart, candlestick chart that we have by now very well know where it is used, a dot plot, a typical thing where one falls over the other, a dot plot. Then there is a shuttler's detection chart. Then there is another clustered column and tornado chart. So basically, when you want to show something as a distribution of values over a period of time or any other measure, or that can be done using these charts. Similarly, there is something known as correlation chart, wherein to show correlation between the measures. So when I use, for example, a typical example is line and a clustered column chart, wherein I have something in terms of a bar chart. It can be a sales for product A and B in this example. In like here, sales for product A and B over a period of time. At the same time, I want to see the probably volume or something totally different, but and which occurs over a period of time. It can be for sales, it can be raw materials or season or growth, right? Of something, or a share price of that thing, of that company. The share price is not directly related to the sale, but yes, share prices changes over a period of time. So if there are two distinct measures which are only loosely coupled on a one basis, which is time, or any other basis, then you can make use of a correlation measures. Which, why are these required? These are required because if you want to draw attention of an impact of certain items on another, then these charts help you identify those impacts. And wherever you see the alphabet R is in, then the R is required in your visuals and your Power BI and desktop application. Then again, this is again a line and a stack chart. So when you have a two distinct, in short, if I have to brief you on this correlation chart, it would be like when you have to add, if you want to represent more than one or a different kinds of measures which are not compatible directly, and they are varied but they have commonality in place, then you can make use of this correlation chart. Next, then there is a single value chart. Single value chart are best known as cards, and these are the KPI charts wherein they aggregate a value of any particular measure or a column or any calculation and give you a single figure. These are most prominently used by the high level execs in your organization, which detect the health of the organization by looking at these values. For example, the revenue for the day, the cost for the day, current liabilities. In terms of banking, there would be a ratio, the repo rate, the reverse repo rate. For example, a gold rate, a silver rate, for example, any other single, or a pass percentage, or the QA test percentage. So these are single unit values which identify the worthiness of your entire gamut of things, and using this single value. For example, This you can understand. If I have to draw an analogy, you can compare it with a thermometer. Thermometer displays temperature, and if the temperature goes beyond a particular value, that is 98 degrees Fahrenheit, then it means the something is wrong. Similarly, a single value available in these charts can be easily made use of to identify the anomaly in the system if there is. And these are indicators, these are KPIs, these are key performance indicators, which converts entire gamut into a single numeric value, which is good enough for the management to take a decision and helps the decision making process faster. So what are these charts? These are cards by status. Okay, Viz. Then there is a card default given to us by the Power BI desktop. Then there is multi-row card, which includes lot many KPIs. Then there is a tabular card. Then there is a matrix. Then there is a KPI ticker, which is like shows a difference over a previous day or something. Then there's a scroller chart. If you want a marquee scroll running over to your visualization report, you can have that in place. Then there's a user list by Cloud Scope. Then there's a timeline by Cloud Scope. Then there's a multi KPI. If you have more than one KPI, singular values, you can do that. Then there's a collage. Then there's KPI indicator. Then there is advanced card. Then there's rotation. Then there's Acteria, gauge, tachometer, dial gauge, circle KPI. So these represent single value, and which can have at least one or two attribute to it. But however, those single values are good enough for the decision maker to rely their decision on. Then there are filters chart. These are different kinds of slicers and filters available, which helps you control the content used and displayed on the system and accordingly show the values of the selected content. For example, if you are working on different products, you can select a particular product. If you are working on multiple regions in your chart, then you can choose a select single region. Then if you are working on attribute slicer, then you can change the attribute value and find a range. Then there is a smart filter. Then there's a chiclet filter. If there are countable items of your filtration, you can have those button kind of a thing wherein you can click, and similarly that data pertaining to that particular selected item only gets displayed and considered for visualization. Then there is a time slicer. Time slicer, out of all the dates what you're looking for, you can specifically denote which date you would like to have the data represented on the visualization on. Usually it belongs to a current day, current month, etc. Right. Then there is an enlightened slicer. Then there is an hierarchy slicer. Hierarchy slicer typically works on typically if you have a sales hierarchy in place and you're working on a sales data, then you would have your global head having lot many national heads under him, and national heads would have lot many state heads or a region heads, and then there would be a city heads, and there would be a ground level salesperson. So that's kind of a hierarchy. It also can have your organizational hierarchy coming from a CEO to the ground level person. It can have as many hierarchies of whatever things which can be made into hierarchy represented in this hierarchy slicer. Also remember, like we saw it in the earlier discussion, that these slicers have lots of overhead. Use it sparingly, and therefore it improves the performance of your overall Power BI visuals, reports, and dashboards. Then there are narrative charts. These charts tell a story with the data. So narrative charts convert your content into a story or the numbers into story. So the idea of these charts help you convert the qualitative data into a quantitative data, or quantitative data rather into a qualitative data. So your numbers get easily converted into these narrative charts. Also, the default feature of this narrative is a Q&A section in your Power BI desktop, wherein if you enable your Q&A, You can query your Power BI cloud for a specific data, and then Power BI cloud auto generates a visual and displays it in the best form. The narrative chart is another part of a story wherein you can provide the data and the system these charts displayed in a word based manner. So these are word based charts which convert the numbers into words. A very interesting way, you can always explore them. And if you see, none of these are made available in Power BI desktop by default. Also, these are not available in the app source. So since these are not yet tested by the Microsoft and the team, it will take some time for these to evolve to a mark which Microsoft standard is, and accordingly it would then be absorbed in the Power BI desktop. So you can always experiment with these, nonetheless to say that it will take some time to evolve. Then there are certain miscellaneous charts which includes a Power Apps chart, DS Visual, HTML viewer, and these help you use these charts and display that content. So example, HTML viewer would most likely is going to show you the HTML content available in your data source. So a good way is of doing things is having a HTML viewer visual so that it renders the content properly. Then there's a text wrapper and there is a text enhancer, and these are certain experimentative charts which are not directly linked to the line of business, but they are very innovative and creative, and people are advised to explore them on their own and make use of it. Let's have a look at all the tips and tricks what we can make use of while designing the Power BI desktop and making beautiful dashboards and reports. The first one we would like to highlight here is Power Query. When you work with the Power Query, give every step an explanatory name and merge steps of the same type for better manageability of the Power Query. Give queries and column friendly usernames, and this also is necessary to utilize in Q&A. Make sure that each column in each table has the correct data type. This will make the data model smaller, and as a result, the application and the desktop would run faster. Remove columns you are not going to use in your report, and then moreover use remove other columns rather than remove columns option. This reduces the risk of structure changes in your data source break the query. And structure your queries in folders. For example, a folder for facts, your folder query folder for dimensions, a query folder for function, and a query folder for miscellaneous, and so on and so forth. All this is for a better manageability of the Power Query. Enable or turn off the enable load for queries that do not need the data model. So for queries which do not have a data model associated, you can have enable load set to off. This improves the performance. Prefer reference over duplicate of a query. As we saw in our earlier demos and learning sessions, that reference means you point to the same query, whereas duplicate means there are two versions of the same query. Therefore, it would be difficult for a designer or developer to have consistent updates across both the queries, and also would lose track. So the better way of you doing things would be reference over duplicate. In general, prefer import over direct query. So this is another set wherein you have to use import, which brings in the data in the Power BI desktop and in your Power BI PBIX file rather than direct query, because direct queries do not store local data, whereas it queries the data source as and when required. It also makes use of the caching feature. Also, direct query has to be evaluated for the thresholds of the network bandwidth and the time and the performance needed. So basis that you can take a call of a direct query or an import. This is all about Power Query tips and tricks. Next, now for the data model, Always use a separate data table in your data model and mark it as a data table. So these are good to have or good to know features which, if you make use of, it will help you work with the data and Power BI in a very systematic, organized, and manageable fashion. Only use DAX calculated columns when it is not possible to create using Power Query. This improves clarity and manageability of your report as transformations are located where you expect them. So columns are to be created only when you cannot use or make use of Power Query. A good learning point. Why it is so? Because and it improves the clarity and manageability of your report, and transformations are located in where you expect them. Also give a prefix to all your measures just to identify or distinguish them amongst the columns, table names, etc. And therefore, if you follow a standard pattern of prefixing your measures with some identifier or a symbol, it becomes easier to look for those measures in one go in your search bar of your data source. Then use standard abbreviations like YTD, LY, PY, which stands for year to date, month to date, last year, previous year, etc. to keep these base fields together. So if you use them, and then it is simpler for you to manage. Then hide columns that are needed but are irrelevant for the user. So certain columns is used by your system for calculating a measure or deriving a measure. However, that column in itself is not needed by the end user. End user is a consumer of the measure which you built your content on. Therefore, you can hide those columns when itself will never render that column either in export, download, or in any visual. Hide the key at the many side of the many to one relationship. So if you hide the key at the many side, so the key is the primary key. So if you hide it, then it becomes simpler and clearer. People will not confuse them with the source column, rather will look for that value in some other export or a data table. A good way of doing things. It's a very trivial case, but it is good to know. Think about using the new filter pane. Why? Because it provides an option to hide and lock filters for end users to use. So for example, if you are using slicers, and slicers reduce your effectiveness on the space of your screen, you can move them to the new filter pane, point number one, then lock those filters so that the end user cannot make change to those values. This is a huge improvement from earlier implementation or earlier versions of Power BI, wherein these new filter pane was not available and filters used to be passed on to the end users. A very good improvement on the product. For each measure column in your data model, make DAX calculated measure instead of using the default summarization. Then hide the original column. This way all measures will have the same icon, and it enables you to change the calculation in the future. So this is more towards the implementation and the design kind of a phase wherein you can manage all your measures in one place. Always use the table name when you need to access the column. So a good idea is when you are preparing a query or a Power Query or making a measure, and if that column name is unique across the ecosystem of that PBIX file, you can directly call that column name. However, the best practice would include calling the table and opening a right bracket and then searching for that column, which ensures the correctness of that table. Also in future, if there is another table having the same column, the ambiguity on the errors on the Power BI part can be eliminated. Then use divide function to prevent division by zero and improve the speed of the division. In DAX, you can uncomment the DAX line by using Alt Shift and A or Control plus slash and Shift plus Enter for line breaks. So these are the line breaks, and then uncommenting. These are the things you will have to make use of. Use aggregations to keep your model small and performant and still have detailed data available. So you can aggregate your content into another smaller summary tables, which you can keep displaying in your dashboard. And then you can also have an underlying data somewhere in some detail sheet. Improves the performance. So aggregations is a key term.